This week we're creating a complex New Year's ribbon in Procreate, intertwined with simple flat florals. We'll be using my free monoweight brush for the ribbon, along with a few brushes from my Gouache Lovers brush set to add extra texture, but you can use any brushes that you'd like. The color palette for this project is free as always. Just tap the link in the video description and you can download and install it. I'm going to start by creating a brand new canvas. I've listed my specs on screen. And let's begin. Okay, I've got my brand new canvas, and the first thing we're going to do is set our background color. So come to your layers, tap on background color, and we're going to use the very first color on the top row. I do want to mention that this is one of the most advanced tutorials that I've published to date. So if you're brand new to Procreate, I would encourage you to check out my free Procreate for Beginners course before tackling this tutorial. So for this ribbon, we're going to start with that first. I'm going to, on this very first layer, I'm going to select this white color, and I have my monoweight brush selected. So we need to decide the shape of our ribbon, and I already know that I want Happy New Year, so I need 3 lines, so I need 3 ribbons to do that. So I wanted one long one, a little one, and another long one. So in order to do that, I wanted my ribbon to come around and make a big one, and then come around again, come around a last time, and then curl up. So that's the shape, and that's how I established the shape that my ribbon would have. So keeping that in mind, I'm going to draw out that shape. Let me reduce my brush size just a little bit and try not to fill too much of the canvas because this is just going to be a template. We can make it larger later on. Okay, so I'm just going to come around and make sure you make it pretty curvy because it'll just feel that much more like a ribbon with these curls. So this feels pretty good, but let's see how it works when we actually make it into a ribbon. So in order to do that, first I'm going to reduce the opacity of this just a little bit. I'm coming down to about 50% and then duplicate it. And we're going to move the duplicated layer down to establish the thickness of our ribbon. And I do like this thickness. So that's looking like it's going to work. I think I'm going to stop this one a little shorter because I don't like how close it's getting right there. So I might end it just a little shorter, but that's really the only change that I see myself making. I want to give myself enough thickness to put that lettering in. And you can see I'm dragging it straight down, so I've got those lines appearing. And if you have uniform and snapping turned on, you should see those lines as well. Now that I have my ribbon base completed, I'm going to group these 2 layers together, and I'm going to create a brand new layer. I'm going to reduce my brush size just a little bit more. I'm going to come down to about 10%. And now we need to decide which parts of the ribbon are going to go behind or in front of other parts of the ribbon. So we can start right up here at the top. I'm not overlapping anything yet, so we can just template this in. So I'm going to put my little notch in my ribbon. I'm going to follow the same contour around, but I'm going to stop short because obviously this part would not be a part of the ribbon. We need it to look more continuous than that. And then I want Happy in Year to be in front, and I want this part of the ribbon to be behind those 2 sections. So I have New kind of pushed to the back to create a little bit of hierarchy and just more depth. So I know that I want this one in the forefront and I want this part of the ribbon in the forefront. So I can bring this one down here. So I'm just going to connect down, straight down, bring this one around, and then stop it short before you get to this little notch so we can decide what we're going to do here. And then right here where we have the overlapping, I've already decided that this part of the ribbon is going to go in front of this part of the ribbon. So I can draw this part in. This part does take a little bit of practice, but once you do it a few times, it'll come really naturally and really quickly. So now we've got this part is the front. This part where we have this little crisscross, I already decided that this section is more important than this section. So this section is going to continue up instead of this part. And then down here, we can connect these again, straight down, and then we decide what's going to happen. And since this one's going to be in front of this one, this line's going to continue. And then this one's going to be in the back. Follow this line. We're not going to draw this line in because it's going to be behind this top ribbon. And this bottom ribbon down here is going to be in front of this section. So I actually want this overlap to happen, and I can draw that in right here. So when this part comes down, it's going to stop right there. It's not going to continue. Hopefully that's making sense. The more you do it, the easier it gets for sure. I want this one to be in front. So when I draw this section down, this part is going to take precedence over this curve. So this part's going to be the curve that comes up, and this curve's going to stop right there. And then I can continue drawing this part, and this is going to be in front of this part. And I decided I wanted to stop this just a little bit shorter. So that's what I'm going to do here. And there we go. So now we can turn off our template or our guide from the original one. And this is what our rough ribbon looks like right now. So now we can decide if we want to make any changes before we draw in our final one. And I think this works. So I'm going to move forward with it. If you want it any larger, now would be the time to make it a little larger if you want, or smaller. But I like the scale of this. I'm going to stick with this. So now we're going to paint in the color, and some people like color dropping the different sections. I like redrawing them so it's a solid color so I don't have an outline around all of my colors. So now I'm going to redraw it one more time in the actual colors that it's going to be. So I'm going to reduce the opacity of this one way down just so I can faintly see it, so then I can see everything I draw on top of it. Create a brand new layer, and I'm going to have two different colors for this. I'm going to have the colors for the sections of the ribbon that are going to be behind, and the color for the ones that are going to be in front. So the behind sections are this one, this middle one, and this one's every other one, and then these ones are going to be in the front. So these ones are just going to be a shade darker than this one, just to create an extra sense of depth with color. So I'm going to be using the second color for the shaded areas and the white color for the front sections. So let's do the back sections first. I'm going to grab that color and then just retrace what I just drew. Okay, and once you have a section drawn in, you can just fill that with color and move on to the next one. I've got my back sections, now I'm going to draw on my front section. So I'm going to put these on a new layer. We will end up merging them together, but I like drawing them in separately so I can make any changes before I merge them. So create a brand new layer, switch to the white, and do the same thing with the front sections. Okay, once you have your front and your back sections drawn in, just give it a look over and see if there's any areas that you want to clean up. What I like to do is reduce my brush size just a little bit, and I come into these tighter areas and I will just add any extra details that I need to in here, these finer points, to make the transition a little bit smoother that you can't do with a larger brush. So that helps me make the ribbon transitions a little bit cleaner. So now that I have my ribbon, I'm comfortable merging it together. So I'm going to pinch these together, and now I have my ribbon. Next, we're going to paint in all of our florals on top. So I'm going to create a brand new layer. I'm going to grab my pink color, and I'm going to switch to my Gouache Lovers brush set. And let's start with the thick, round, textured brush. And I'm going to paint these pretty large. My size is about 15%. And I'm just going to throw up some really simple flower shapes right here. So these are just easy petals. And then I also want to throw in some flower buds as well. So I'm changing up the scale a little bit and the orientation. So I'm rotating them just a little bit here and there. And I'm keeping them mostly on the sides because I know I'm going to have lettering and I don't want to cover up the lettering. Next, I'm going to add in some lines to give my flowers a little bit more detail. So I'm going to create a brand new layer. I'm going to switch to my pink color, and I'm going to grab my dried out brush up at the top to add a little more texture to this. And this brush size is a little smaller. I'm going to come down to about 10% and just draw some lines straight up on all of these. I'm going to start adding in a few of my stems, so I'm going to create a brand new layer. I'm going to switch to my lighter green color, so it's the third one on the bottom row, and I'm going to switch to my liner brush right up here and increase the size a bit. I'm going to come up to about 8%. And on the flower buds, I'm just going to draw basically like a triangle with a curve at the top and then paint that in. And then same thing with these larger ones, it'll just be much wider. Okay, now we can start drawing in our stems. So I'm going to create a brand new layer and drag this underneath my flowers layer and just draw all these stems coming down. Okay, now that I have my stems, now I'm going to paint in some leaves. So I'm going to create a brand new layer. I'm going to switch to my darkest green color, so it's the fourth one on the bottom row. And for this one, I'm going to switch my brush to the streaky semi-transparent brush. So I like drawing pointed leaves by going light pressure, heavy pressure, light pressure with this brush, and it's got a nice streaky texture inside, so it kind of brings it to life a little bit more with that added texture. So I'm just going to do this on each stem, and I do want to send this layer behind my stem layer, so I'm just going to drag that underneath the stem layer. So now I've got my leaves coming off of the stem behind it. Once you have your leaves in there, now we're going to group all of our flower elements together. And I'm going to create a copy of this group. Let's label this group Flowers. Duplicate this group and turn off the visibility of the group, and we need to merge all of these together. So tap on the layer thumbnail and choose Flatten. So now all of these are on the same layer. So this part is also going to be a little bit more advanced. So what we're going to do is duplicate this layer. So we're duplicating our flattened flower layer, and I'm going to turn that off temporarily. Next, we're going to come down to our ribbon layer and we're going to select it. So tap on the layer thumbnail and choose Select. Down here, you're going to tap Invert because right now the ribbon is selected and now we want to select everything but the ribbon. So hit Invert and that's what that will do for us. Come back to your layers, tap on the flower layer that has the visibility turned on, and tap on the layer thumbnail and choose Mask. So now you can see on the layer Mask, it's a black ribbon. If yours is white, in order to change it, all you have to do is tap on that layer mask thumbnail and choose Invert. So that's another way that you can go back and forth, but we want the ribbon to appear black right here. Okay, so coming back up to this layer that we duplicated and turned off, we're going to turn it on now, but reduce the opacity by a lot. We're coming down to like 25%. We're just going to use this as a guide layer. We're not actually going to use this in our final art at all. So return back to the layer mask layer. We want to make sure our color is white right here. So double tap where the white is. And we're going to switch back to the monoweight brush. Okay, I'm going to increase the size up a bit. I'm going to come up to about 10%. And we need to choose now which parts of our florals we want in front of the ribbon and which we want behind the ribbons. So if I turn off this guide layer, you can see everything is behind the ribbon right now. And this guide layer lets us know where the actual flowers are hitting on our ribbon, so then we can decide which ones we want in front and which ones we want in back. So with that turned on, we can start making some decisions. So I know that I want this one poking up in front, so I can just paint right over this where the ribbon is to reveal this again in front of the ribbon. I need to increase my brush size. So I can just paint right on top pretty loosely just where the flower is. And now you can see if I turn off my guide layer, now I've got that flower poking up in front of the ribbon. So we're going to do that, and I like having a pretty healthy mix of things sitting on top and things sitting behind. That way it makes it much more interesting for the eye to look at and take everything in. So I can do the same thing over here. I want this one to come forward as well, so I can paint over that, but maybe I want it behind that section, but in front of that section. So if I undo that, I can just reveal this part and leave that part behind. So this makes it really easy for me to have things poking in front, poking behind. It becomes much more dynamic. And if you want to preview it at any point in time, just turn off the visibility of your guide layer, zoom out and see how it's feeling. And if you made a mistake, like if I painted this part in by accident, all I have to do is switch back to black and paint over it, and you can re-hide it. Okay, let's see how this looks. I'm going to turn off that template layer. I think that's nice. I like that. Okay, so let's add in our lettering next. So I'm going to create a brand new layer. I'm going to switch to my blue color, so it's the third one at the top. And I'm going to return back to my gouache lever set and switch to the dried out brush and write in my message. Okay, so I had my E overlapping this flower bud, so all I have to do is drag this lettering layer underneath the flower layer, and now it can pop behind it, and I even get some extra sense of depth with my lettering. Okay, so now we're going to just add in some extra effects to push that depth even more. So what I'm going to do is come down to my ribbon layer, tap on the layer thumbnail, choose Select, create a brand new layer right above it, switch to the fourth color on the top row, return back to that layer, tap on the layer thumbnail, and choose Fill Layer. And then drag that one underneath the white ribbon layer. And we're going to apply a motion blur. So we're just creating a shadow for this ribbon. I'm going to tap on my magic wand, choose motion blur, just drag this straight down, and then select it because we've got the motion blur on the top and on the bottom, and I only want it on the bottom. So I'm just going to drag it straight down into place and then apply a Gaussian blur to it. So come back to the magic wand, choose Gaussian blur, and then just increase this a little bit to soften it. So I wanted that shadow direction moving downward and just softened a little bit. So that's why I did both of those types of blurs. And then I like this, but it is a little bit heavy. So let's see if we change the blend mode of this. So tap on the little N, let's change it to overlay. And I like how that feels. And then I want a little bit more of a sense of depth, and a little trick that I like to do, I'll do it up here at the top and then I'll drag it into place. Create a brand new layer. I'm going to switch to my darkest green color. And you can really grab any brush. I'm going to grab the thick round opaque and just, let me make it bigger. I'm going to paint a little circle right here and then apply a Gaussian blur to that. Only this Gaussian blur is going to be fairly large. And then I'm going to select it and make it even bigger and put it right in the middle. And then I can send that behind everything. So it's right above my background color layer. And now it's really starting to push those lighter colors forward. It is a little bit heavy though. So let's change this one's blend mode to multiply and then reduce the opacity down to about 50%. Let's see what that looks like. And then to add one little extra effect to ring in the new year, let's add some just snow flurries. So I'm going to create a brand new layer up at the very top, switch to the second color on the top row, and you can grab any brush. I'm going to use the dried out brush for some extra texture and just paint in some little dots here and there. Vary up the size so it feels like real snow. Happy New Year! If you enjoyed this tutorial, please hit the like button, subscribe, and I'll see you next week, but I'll also see you next year.